playing them very well. The problem I have this week is I think he's gone back to submitting some bad decks again. Which, Murloc Paladin, no, not a fan. Aggro Warrior, no, not sure where that one's coming from. And then on top of that, SilverName has then chosen to protect his Paladin going into this series as well, which I believe he did in the previous series as well. I'm personally just not sure where his head is at with this lineup construction coming into week 2.
Well, I mean, look, Paladin's not a bad, Murloc Paladin's not a bad deck, but it's not a deck that gives you agency. And with what you just said to me, it sounds like SilverName's playing the game pretty well. Why limit your agency by picking a deck that is trying to take that away from both players and limit it to the success versus failure rate of your Murloc Paladin?
Right, yeah. Once SilverName's actually in game, I think his play has actually been very impressive. You know, it's our commentary of him last season was kind of colored by this fact that he was losing a lot and bringing what we was considering to be quite weak decks. But when we actually started breaking down the way he was playing them, we were like, oh, he's actually doing some really intelligent things here. So yeah, I feel like, you know, decks like Aggro Warrior, Murloc Paladin, for example, are just kind of limiting factors to SilverName.
They're decks that are built on success versus failure rate.
High rolls.
Aggro Warrior, you really want Bloodsworn Mercenary.
Yeah.
With Murloc Paladin, you really want Prismatic Lens.
Yeah.
Without those two cards, your win rate suffers dramatically, but with those two cards, your win rate increases a lot. Warrior has some potential to shut that down, though. I'd say that Warrior is really the one class that does a number on these big power spike types of turns that are trying to just simply overwhelm the opponent. They're not trying to gain a substantial advantage as the game progresses. They're trying to take that advantage immediately.
Yeah, and crucially here, SilverName has both prismatic lenses and therefore access to both tip the scales. But Thijs can respond to that with Brawl on 5, triple Warpath on 6, back-to-back, which is likely to be a very effective board clear both times.
Yes, and so now my experience in the matchup hasn't quite been that simple. You know, once SilverName plays 2 copies of Tip the Scales, which is very likely this game, what that does is it often opens up the opportunity for Chef Nomi and for Zephyrus to be pretty majorly impactful.
Yes.
And so I think he's got kind of the dream hand here as long as he doesn't actually draw Tip the Scales, and that could prove troublesome for Thijs.
I will also say, just to stave off any accusations of bias against SilverName, which I absolutely do not have, he deserves this hand after what we saw yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, he...
RDU.
Oh my goodness, he got stomped through zero fault of his own on the previous game against RDU. I say zero fault. He did play Aggro Warrior on purpose.
Nomi found as well, so SilverName's got the setup. It's -7 cards in the deck. 2 Murloc Tidecallers off the bat as well.
Summon the boys.
And so since Warpath isn't good enough, gets a charge as well. And the Murloc Tasty Fin. So you wipe out the Scargill on the other side. You protect the Murloc War Leader. You add Murmy to the board to get a little bit of pressure going.
Yep.
Is it the Murmy, though? I guess the Tip the Scales is a couple turns off. The second one.
It survives Brawl, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, I think Thijs can consider what a Warpath looks like, but at the end of the day, I am not interested in taking that much damage.
And the second Brawl being drawn is...
That's a Tidecaller that lives, though.
Also enormous for Thijs. Yeah, he can take a lot of damage here. They do both end up dying.
The first 2 out of the pool are the Tidecallers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the next best outcome as far as SilverName is concerned. Most likely just have the nice beefy core on the board.
You tip the scales. So that does hurt a lot. And so now he's got to figure out a way to just get pressure rolling. But he does have still ways to back this up. You know, he's got the True Silver Champion, he's got Grimscale Oracle in hand, and he can back that up even further with Toxfin on the following turn to start pushing through taunts like our Megadillo, for instance.
Yep.
But I think with Chef Nomi in hand, SilverName's got game in this one. Both Tip the Scales are going to come out. He's going to have very few cards left and access to pretty much the full suite. Finley's the only thing that's gone.
Yeah, the issue is that Brawl that Thijs used was the second one that he drew later in the game, and he's still sat on Warpath for a Tip the Scales clear and the Brawl for the Nomi clear. So it's going to come down to like the little intersections, like how Thijs is able to deal with this board right now, which isn't responsible for either of those, and also just how big that Tip the Scales ends up being in terms of remaining Murlocs in SilverName's deck, because he could get to the point by the time he's able to cast it that it just doesn't really do anything with the remaining cards left in his deck. These are all things Thijs has to weigh up because he has to severely consider how much damage he can take by not using his premium clears on boards like this, versus how weak the rest of SilverName's deck is getting because of how heavily front-loaded your pressure is when you get a good draw with Murloc Paladin.
Yeah, I mean, SilverName is, he is, I mean, people are drawing well against him.
They really are, yeah. I mean, let's just call it like it is. He has run into some fantastic hands from his opponent, and I'm not going to hold this up as like, hey, look, I'm right. He brought weird aggro decks and he's losing. Like, I'd love to see this be played back again against some average hands from RDU and Thijs. I suspect the result would still be similar, but we're really not learning anything from how good SilverName's opponent's hands are.
Just kind of the nature of it.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to draw Prismatic Lens a pretty large number of times with this deck. It makes a big difference, but you're just so susceptible to Warrior's most powerful cards. You can see Zephyrus is active. Not a ton of Murlocs left in the deck either. And so this is where, you know, SilverName, I think, really ends up struggling, is you look at a turn like this one, and there's just not much to do.
Right.
You know, if he had something impactful on this turn, something to do on the next turn, that's a different story. He was relying on that Prismatic Lens to fetch the second tip to scales. I've noticed that SilverName verbalizes a lot to himself. And that's something that's really interesting to me, is I've noticed that as I've been casting for half a decade now, I've noticed that when I used to play cards, I had to be silent in order to think through my turns. But now that I've cast so much, when I'm silent, I often have no idea what I'm doing. I just let my instinct take over. And it works a lot. I think my instinct is pretty strong. But when I'm verbalizing the turns, it is so much clearer what I should be doing to myself.
That is actually really interesting.
Hearthstone's the one game you can get better at by actually not playing it and by watching it instead. That's what the whole deck's full of, though.
I know!
It's just an abysmal matchup,
but does
too.
it have to be the perfect card for the perfect board each turn exactly?
That's the problem, is it's from the right side, right?
Right, yeah.
If it was in the middle of the hand,
yeah,
you'd be
you're
like,
just like, all right, fine.
But it's got Dynamatic, too.
But it's just highlighting the problem every turn, and it's, you know, you do have to have some sympathy for the situation.
Sympathy?
What?
I'm not going to have sympathy for anybody getting beat down. I think it's fun.
Okay, well, fair enough.
Now, whether or not it's the kind of fun I always want to have, that's another story. I don't always want to see people get beat down by top decks. But SilverName's the one player who reacts to it in such a very vivid and distinct way that it is strangely entertaining to watch. And I think yesterday him sticking around in the game with RDU for so long,
That was great.
he was also, you know, strangely entertained by what was happening.
Yes, I will give you that. That was fantastic.
Dice pulls ahead on board now, and that's a problem. Oh my gosh. At least that one's hidden for now from SilverName. All right, I do feel kind of bad.
We found Admirable's breaking point.
It's when the top deck isn't even shown yet.
Yeah.
Crouching Tiger, hidden top deck.
By the way, there's a freaking rusty recycler in this hand as well. Oh, jeez.
It's being responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, tip scales is just not impactful. You got to get to the Nomi, though.
It's like an amalgam, a tasty fin, a tox fin. Some stuff, basically.
Toxfin is such a good card, but it's like the one card in this deck I keep wanting to replace.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm almost
Just want to chunk your Murloc. I will say that in Wild, when you have old Murkai in the mix, this deck it's something else.
Yeah, yeah. Murkai definitely changes a lot of equations.
Just 18s you all of a sudden, you're like,
Yeah.
ah! But yeah, Thijs has just got the goods to check what SilverName's doing. swing would account for Warpath. That's exactly what SilverName's thinking about, but I think his conclusion he's drawn is I'm not beating that card.
Yeah, right. The swing would mean that, like, you have that swing made, and then next turn you can potentially swing a True Silver Champion again into something else if you're going to spend mana on doing that, but it seems unlikely that you would do that anyway, considering that you're about to empty your deck and have Chef Nomi in your hand, so I think you can hold it, just True Silver it afterwards if he needs to.
I guess there's something to be said about the idea of it trading into the War Leader as well. So like if you swing and it trades into the War Leader, Thijs doesn't get an activation of the Armageddon.
Okay, yeah, it does make a difference, I guess.
But the Warpath, I think, was what was distinctly on his mind.
Right. I think considering Warpath, the play he made is perfectly fine. You just ignore it and hit it next time. It does cost you that extra buff. Same situation as trading into the War Leader, but I don't think it's important.
He's going no brawl. I got both Warpaths.
Boom! Yeah.
The thing about it too is that honestly, not attacking so that Warpath was the play Thijs favored would have been a way to maybe bait a Warpath so that you had to force your opponent to have a second brawl instead of like a Warpath Plague of Wrath in this spot as well.
Sure.
So he actually even had insight into not swinging and perhaps, you know, putting Thijs in a position where he felt like it was necessary to clear that damage out.
Yeah,
He really does play super smart. It's just some of the decks he brings are just, they're not getting the job done.
Yeah. This is a Tyrion and a Gorehau, yep. We know this one. It is known.
It is known. What's so funny? I mean, I expected that to be an Omega Devastator on the right side of the hand.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't, to be perfectly honest.
He doesn't even, he's just considering tanking sixth.
Yeah, I mean, again, it borderline irrelevant what Thijs chooses to do with these next few turns. He just needs to not die to 15 Ashbringer damage plus a Leroy. Like, that's basically all he has to achieve this game.
This looks ridiculous, this Rusty Recycler. Zilliax it up, why not? Just, I don't need this lifesteal.
Game one, SilverName, are you going to hang on in there again? No, he is going to give it up. And
I believe it's his rogue deck. It's been banned twice now as a result of that. I want to see him protect that rogue. If you're going to bring a lineup like this, the rogue's the best one.
Hard agree.
Deals the most damage. End of story.
Life is so simple in Admirable World. I wish I lived there.
No, you don't.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. It's tough being this handsome and smart.
Yeah, I agree. Tougher mulligan, I think, on the side of SilverName there than it was for Thijs.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in comparison to life. I mean, that's a rough-looking mulligan, but you do draw Prismatic Lens.
Yep.
I know.
Honestly, the fact that he's got both Grimscale Oracles might be a blessing in disguise here.
I think that was the question for SilverName, is like how much of a curve he wanted to keep himself versus how hard he wanted to go in for that Prismatic Lens.
I so want to kill this.
Admirable is wincing that the Secret Keeper gets to live a turn here. And he's going to allow some significant value to be picked up from this secret curve coming out from Thijs.
I guess if you intend to just call out the secret regardless of which one gets played,
Yeah.
this is fine then. I just hate having to do that.
I think because he has Prismatic Lens in hand, that second Grimscale Oracle actually has huge value with the board of Murlocs that he's going to have after the fact as well.
That's a true story.
Literally just set up lethal on turn 6 or whenever it is after the tip comes down.
Thijs, meanwhile, operating on the pressure plate into masked contender curve. Thijs doesn't value trade. That would be psychotic. Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe.
Well, I was thinking exactly Cold Light Seer, but I think the Grimscale Oracle is probably still more threatening in that example.
Thijs
I would have liked the coin. I was digging it.
deciding whether he wanted a Murloc Raider that turn. Said no in the end. Perhaps gave a little bit of information away by mousing over the coin there towards the end of his turn, suggesting that maybe it was a 1-mana Murloc that he was given from the Fishflinger. There's very few natural 1-mana cards in his deck, if any, that he would have considered playing at the end of his turn there.
So I'm thinking exactly about Snipe when he plays his Toxfin first. Rewarded. Rewarded for your excellent play.
Yes.
Punished for your opponent having a secret in play.
Now he gets the Snipe to go along with his Pressure Plate.
Yeah, in SilverName, I'm going to have to think about Snake Trap, Explosive Trap, Freezing Trap first and foremost. And then Pressure Plate will be on his mind afterwards, because the one that's set right now is looking like Rat Trap or Pressure Plate.
Yep.
The first one that's set, that is. Thijs still considering the Murloc Raider. I still like it. SilverName's not having it.
Yeah, this time the weird stop and pause was kind of more essential because he needed to wait for the information of what came off the Mask Contender, because that impacts whether you want to coin a 1-drop onto the board. He does end up doing it in the end, so the concealed information isn't being given away.
Wow, it's just super specific combat scenario.
I wonder.
Every secret changes everything.
Yep, Snakes, Freezing, Explosive, Snipe, all massive impacts.
Pretty happy if it's Explosive Trap, because it just gets it out of the way.
All right, so Pressure Plate going off here. Quite a big deal which one he gets.
Got something to hide?
Getting the 3-2 there would have allowed Thijs to have a pretty massive board going into the potential Tip the Scales turn from the opponent.
Yeah, it's still pretty massive.
It is still pretty massive, yeah.
But I think that does yield an edge over to SilverName still. You know, Thijs is going to be doing cleanup work here, and SilverName's got a hand to back this up. So the fact that Thijs has built up a board, I think only means so much. I think it was necessary for Thijs to be in this game. Oh my. It's just so scary every time.
How you react to it, like, whoa, it's huge! It's always huge.
So Thijs now has to dig deep and figure this out. There's also, you know, problem for Explosive Trap setups on Thijs' side where Cold Light Seer can change all of that. So the fact that he sees a Cold Light Seer hanging out on board,
Yeah.
bit of a blessing.
I wonder.
Still no knowledge of where that second one is, though. And it would be game-ending if he goes for an Explosive Trap setup here.
Yeah, if it got drawn off the Prismatic Lens, it's not playable. So it's going to be 6 cards versus 12 cards.
Yes.
So a third of the time, your opponent's going to have a Cold Light Seer here.
Though also, you can actually trade in a way where you leave the board full, right? 3-4 goes into 5-4, trade. Yeah, you could have just traded and left the board full with everything at 2 health or less. Played an Explosive Trap where Cold Light wouldn't have been playable. But it does create like a weird, it's a weird stalemate situation that doesn't necessarily resolve in your favor over the course of the game anyway.
Nice pushing as well. Wow.
Just hitting them. And this is where that Grimscale Oracle starts to come into play as well. Toxfin on a Mermy is a big swing. So not only does that activate the Snipe, but it makes a huge mess out of that Misha tool.
Actually might be a helpful snipe to SilverName too.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. Allows him to load up a lot more pressure this turn.
So he's full trade this turn? That's the intent?
Whoa, yeah, I was going to say, why? This Tide Caller being played
Uh-oh.
does surprise me a little. It does seem to indicate full trade. It's either a full trade or it's a mistake.
I think both of those sound like mistakes to me.
Move quickly.
We had so much damage.
I mean, even then, even if you are full trading this turn, why do you want to have the Tide Caller on board that can't attack anyway?
Well, it'd be specifically playing for a top deck Cold Light Seer.
Right, exactly. Like that's the only outcome where you then get to attack with that Tide Caller. Whereas if you full trade and hold those back in your hand, you can attack next turn, activate the explosive trap, and then play them, and then you get to attack with them afterwards.
So I guess the thinking here for SilverName is that Thijs showed aggression, and so he's like, well, I'm not really weak to that, so I guess I'll pressure against that. What's the best way to do that? Set up for Cold Light Seer being massively powerful against what is, you know, very obviously an explosive trap in play.
Okay. Sure, I buy it.
I mean, if he doesn't draw a Cold Light here, I don't think he's attacking.
Oh, of course he is.
Like, I'd be shocked if he attacks here. Just don't do nothing. Does that mean you do something?
What did you say?
I said you don't do nothing. Okay, so...
That means you do something.
Yeah, well, so let me correct that. You never don't do nothing.
There we go.
Wait, does that mean you always do something? Dang it!
But this is like where my head was at. Like, this turn, if he hadn't have played the Tide Caller and the Grimscale, I guess the Grimscale was necessary for trading things, so whatever, you sacrifice that for the ether. So this turn, if he hadn't have played the Tide Caller, he could have just attacked into the explosive trap. He still has a 4-1. He plays his Tide Caller. He plays more Murlocs. And he just has a board again, but he's attacking and representing pressure.
I think that line is superior. However, I see the point. So for Thijs, though, what this does is it draws up a clear game plan for him. Don't put anything in play. Don't let my opponent activate this Murloc Tasty Fin. Keep pressing the hero power button. Use Hunter's Pack. Try to find damage so that you can burst SilverName out of the game with that kill command and the Dino Timber. And when you're talking about bursting people out of the game, the first time I see Desert Spear off a Hunter's Pack, not exactly what I'm looking for. However,
it's not the first time.
It
happened yesterday, and I said, it's happened now, don't forget that, don't make that mistake again. You went, don't worry, I won't, and then immediately did it.
Well, I didn't mention that it only gives 3 weapons, so
okay.
I did somewhat remember it.
All right, fair enough.
You just got to keep poking away with Murloc.
Oh!
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's the juice. Thijs is done.
That is the absolute one off the top.
Yeah, facial expression from Thijs adequate for situation. Take some damage.
Uh,
7 plus 5, 12, 13 now.
15, I believe.
A kingdom for a Timberwolf.
Yeah, seriously.
Wow, imagine if Timberwolf had come off that Hunter's Pack. It would have been quite fitting for the way things have gone for SilverName in terms of the luck department.
Right.
Still a big draw, though. It prevents Thijs from just dying.
Yeah, and Ziliax ends up being a massive deal to support this as well. Not only for the extra clearing power, but for the emergency prevention of Bluegill Warrior just coming through to end the game afterwards.
Quickly.
Unity provisions protection. As much as you really don't want to kill that.
Yeah. Like, SilverName could just kill it himself on the following turn anyway, and you lose your Ziliax for it.
He needs to draw True Silver, and that activates the Zephrys at this point. But now Thijs is going to move up to 9.
Yikes. So a True Silver draw was actually just lethal this turn.
I believe
Because
so.
he would have just gone Zephyrus Fireball if he drew
I
True Silver.
wonder.
Just going to double check that real quick. Yeah, True Silver draw was lethal. Not because of the attack of it, but because it enabled Zephyrus.
Yep.
Let me think.
Reporting for duty.
Most minor of positioning issues due to random outcomes on Thijs' side. It would force him to have to kill the 1/1 first if he wanted the max value explosive trap. However, I
If
think
he hero powered first and then positioned around it. you
yeah.
mean?
However, I think it's supposed to just hit the middle anyway, and then you trade into the war leader instead. So I digress.
Wonder.
Super nitpicky. Thijs not free. Excuse me.
It does look like it's going to have to be an explosive shot turn because there's no other way you can really prevent huge amounts of damage coming through. But Thijs will understand the situation. He'll understand that it's getting down to the point where SilverName is, you know, they favor it to have an active Zephyrus in his hand. So if he can stay at 9, that is out of range of like Zephyrus into same turn lethal outs, which he was in on the previous turn with the Fireball out.
Yeah, and he's got to keep chipping away too. It's so important he keeps chipping away because he has to get to Brand kill command ASAP.
Yes. He now
13 damage, so it's represented.
Yep.
And still
Still no True Silver. King Crush plus the kill command plus the 1 on board next turn.
he can't eliminate this 1/1, can he?
Nope. Can't taunt, can't heal,
Let
can't kill the
me
1/1.
think.
SilverName died. Not even a Bluegill Warrior left in the deck he could draw to run into it.
Oh my gosh. That's insane. That little 1/1. That's the champion of this game.
The little hound that could.
Must move quickly.
Look at those cheeks flapping that snowy wind.
Is not a sentence I thought I'd be hearing today, but here we are.
Good boy!
Yeah, good boy indeed. Crush 'em.
You'll find me wherever the action is.
8 plus 5 plus 1, where I'm from, adds up to 14.
Ah, same.
I mean,
Nice.
based on your maths earlier, I wasn't sure